All righty, guys. We are ever so gracious and lucky enough to have Mr. Lou back so soon with us to finish up his amazing military career in Vietnam. Today is going to be a big day. I know I've been getting lots of messages about not only Mr. Lou and Pat, but Mr. Lou and operating in Khe Sanh. So while we're going to have a special segment, Mr. Lou's going to speak about some of his fellow Delawareans and also some of the men he knew that were lost in Vietnam, sadly. But while this is getting going and y'all are listening to this, go ahead and start getting your Khe Sanh questions in because we'll be hitting the questions very early on. So without further ado, Mr. Lou, I hope you're having a great morning, and I'm going to hand it over to you so you can get started talking about your fellow Delawareans.
Thank you, bud.
Yes, sir.
Uh, on the part one, I mentioned about Hill 875. What I didn't mention was that there were four friends of mine that were killed up there that day, and the first one was Danny Jordan, who was the platoon leader, but he was killed, and then 3 months after he was killed, his son was born, and so his son didn't hardly know anything about him until we made contacts. Uh, uh, and the next guy was a sergeant first class Marion Beach, who was a special forces guy, but he wanted to be a platoon sergeant, so he he switched from the special forces to the 173rd, and he was a platoon sergeant. He was a really good one too, but unfortunately he got killed on December. I mean July the 10th, and the other two guys, one guy was Orrin Poor, he was a 60 machine gunner, who did an outstanding job, and unfortunately he was killed also. And there was another guy, Shepard, Franklin Shepard. He was a fairly new guy in the company, but I was lucky enough to be with him that day, and unfortunately he was killed right in front of me, and I never liked it, but I wanted to make sure that I mentioned those guys particularly. But then there was Bud, there was 58,000, over 58,000 people that lost their lives. But I wish I could read off everybody's name, but I can't. But I do have certain guys that I like, like to recognize, and those four were from the 173rd. And next, uh, next was a guy named uh, uh, Jimmy Bernanke, who was a 173rd guy, and I taught him how to be a forward observer. And unfortunately, he was uh, he was killed by a sniper, and uh, anyhow, he was killed in February of '68, and I always felt bad about him. And then going back to Danny Jordan, he was nominated for the Medal of Honor, but his award was downgraded to the Distinguished Service Cross, which is the second highest award, which is not bad, but it would have been better if he'd got the Medal of Honor. His mom and dad were very devastated by his death, and anyhow, I was the last eyewitness to state. I was the last eyewitness to submitted a statement, but unfortunately, everybody but me is dead. So his award just stated DSC, which is still pretty good. And there was another person that Keith Campbell, who I didn't know, but he was nominated for a Medal of Honor, and his award was also downgraded. But I am friends with his sister and his brother-in-law, and they're very good people. So I wanted to mention him too. He was killed in War Zone D with the 173rd, and of course there was a guy named John Gallagher, and he was killed at Khe Sanh. He was killed in January before I got there, but I have since made friends with his the lady that was going to be when he finished his tour. They were going to get married, and unfortunately, John got killed. So yeah, Linda Linda had to wait 40 some years, almost 50 years, to find out anything about how he died and what happened to him and stuff like that. So I want to mention that, mention his name and heard it. Yeah, yeah. And the soldiers gave up a lot, but there was a lot of family members that really gave up a lot. And we, as an infantry guy, you forget about that kind of stuff. You're only thinking about the hardships that you had. You're not thinking of the other people. But there were quite a few other people. For them 58,000 people, you could multiply it four times, and that's the many. That's how many people were really affected by that war, and it's a shame. I just, as I said, I wanted to. I wanted to, not only John Kettenberg. I think that he really does not get any credit for what he did, but also the helicopter pilot. His name was Mike Barry, and he's one of the riders, and he's a really great guy. And he unfortunately he got the whole team out but John. So I want to mention him because those helicopter pilots were just outstanding people. They were. I wouldn't want to fight any of them right now because they were tough guys back then. And anyhow, I want Mike to be recognized, and I hope he hears this. And of course, there was uh, there was David Babyson Davison, who I became friends with, and he was a good guy. And also at Khe Sanh, there were guys there, and I don't know all the guys that were there, but one of them, a good friend of mine, George Sternberg, his his code name is Troll, but I never call him that. I call him George out of respect for him. And John Smith was another guy. He won a Marine drove his back his truck into the minefield and set off a couple of mines, and the guy got hurt, really hurt, and uh, John Smith actually went out in the minefield and started giving first aid to this guy. So, he Smitty could have been blown up in the all get out, but he disregarded and he went and helped the guy that was in bad shape. So, and also John has passed away in the last 2 years, so he won't hear this, but maybe somebody in his family will. And the other guy was a guy named Bob Strange, he was up at Khe Sanh too, and he's one of the riders, and he is an outstanding top guy. He's just a wonderful person, and I'm glad to be friends with him too. So I hope he hears this, and I didn't forget his name, and I never will. Um, and I think that's about it for the people. I
We've got the here's some photos. There's George on the far right. This is right before that ill-fated bright light that they almost nearly died. George was shot. But I had the pleasure of meeting him at SOAR last year, and
yeah
he is just a very kind man, but you can still see the fire in his eyes. He is
yeah
one hell of a warrior.
yeah yeah
I had one of and we can speak about that photo that we just had of brought up that you sent me. Let me try and find this. I had a picture of Baby Son, although everyone should know what Baby Son, his legend, because he is a just a absolute, much like Jerry. He was around a very very long time. He
yeah
operated a CCS. If I'm not mistaken, he was conventional. His first tour went
yeah
SF, and was
yeah
it
there he is.
CCS? Would work at CCC, and then finally, when CCS closed down, there's Baby Son. He went to CCN, and sadly, he volunteered for a static line insert, and CCN, as Luke can attest, is a whole different place than Cambodia, and he just they weren't they I hate to say it, they just weren't ready for what they were getting into
Right.
up there.
Well, I met Baby Son at FOB2 at Pontoon, and yeah, sort of, he was a legend just like Barry Schreiber. I mean, he was way up there. But I had Taylor had said, they're going to show a movie tonight. You can go over there and watch it if you want to. And it was right. It used to show the movies right outside of the mess hall, on the side of the mess hall. So I go over there. I said, well, I ain't done anything to. I go over and I found a seat, and I'm sitting there, and I didn't know it at the time, but I was right next to Davison, and anyhow, yeah, that's him. This captain comes up to me and he says, "Let me have your rifle." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Let me have your rifle." And I said, "For what?" And he said, "Well, there's some North Vietnamese infiltrators in the camp," and he held his hand out to get the rifle. And I said, "Listen, you don't know me, but I said, I'm carrying a rifle." I said, "In the 173rd, you cannot take your hands off your rifle. That's an automatic Article 15 for you." And I said, "So this is my rifle. I carry it over here. I'm not giving it to you." And I said, in the same sentence, I said, "You point the North Vietnamese infiltrators out, and I'll kill them for you. Just point as many as you want." And the captain got, he went away. And when I sat down, I happened to be sitting right next to Baby Son, and he said to me, "That was I really like that answer." He introduced himself, and of course I didn't know him because I was only at the camp a week, and he said to me, "Let's go on to the range tomorrow and shoot some of our guns." And I said, "Okay," and that's how I met him. Watching a movie and making a statement that, it just.
He instantly recognized that you had your stuff together, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah. I mean, it's just like when a guy asks you to ride your motorcycle. You don't do it. It's just,
No. That's just that's like and even to put it even in more civilian terms, that'd be like a guy at the bar coming up saying, "Hey, you got a beautiful girlfriend. Could we go on a date one night or something?" It's like,
it's the
nah,
same
no, no,
deal. Yeah.
yeah, that's not how this works, man. This is not how that works.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, I had that story written down somewhere, and I was hoping you would mention that. But you point them out to me, sir, and I'll kill them.
Yeah. I said, "It ain't no problem, but you're not getting my rifle." And
No, sir. Nuh-uh.
Davis
Um,
Davison really liked that, and we became friends over just that one sentence, I believe. Because the next day he had a, you know, I had a Brownie 9 millimeter, and that's
oh,
what I carried as my sidearm, and of course, for whatever reason, I kept it hidden. I kept it in the shoulder holster, but under my jacket. And he had a he had a 45, and he had a 38 special. And we shot all the guns that day, and plus he bought a couple. There were so many different rifles and stuff at the compounds, and you were free to just get them. You could go to Bob Howard and say, I really like a Thompson with a silencer on it, and he would produce one, and or else them grease guns with silencers. A lot of guys like them, but to me you couldn't. They were nothing like a car 15. You could shoot a car 15 and hit somebody, but yeah, they those silenced guns, they look cool, but
I was about to say those are the fun guns to use on the range and to look cool in pictures to send
yeah,
home. But like you said, that I wouldn't be going out anything less than a car 15.
that
Um,
grease gun. I mean, you could shoot a whole 40 round magazine and not even hit anybody. And
I mean,
you could be within 10 feet of them and not hit 'em. So
I mean that's like Plaster with when he was using the Swedish K and finally got fed up with it,
yeah,
and got a car. He's like, "Heck, sir, I'm shooting, hitting them, and they're not being scared and they're not going down.
yeah,
I can't do anything with this thing." And
they were a cool looking gun because they were they were sort of like a grease gun but smaller, and they were the ones I seen. They were like a bright green color, and they had a wire stock, and they were light and all that. But there were guys that shot North Vietnamese with them and hit them 5 times, and they still were alive. So that
yeah,
that that tells you need something else.
absolutely. And not knowing if they're hopped up on something, that may be good if you're, clearing trenches or, as a secondary if you're a tanker or something. But when
Yeah,
you're in, taking on, anywhere from 8 to 300 men, a Sten or a Swedish K, that's not going to cut the mustard.
no, no,
Um, would you like to speak a little bit about this special photo that this photo has never been seen before. Mr. Lou literally just sent this to me.
yeah. That's up at Khe Sanh, and that's the Delaware flag. And my the firehouse, the volunteer fire company, sent my mom a flag and asked her to send it to me. And Marie was part of this too. She's the one that actually mailed it to me. And when I got it at Khe Sanh, they wanted the firehouse wanted it. They wanted the flag to fly at a base show up there. Of course, I at that time Khe Sanh was a top secret base, so I just and I never took a picture. Uh, uh, George took them, but I never got these pictures for till after 50 years. They just only been out a few years. But uh, when when I when I got the flag, of course, uh, that was the only flagpole in there, and George Sternberg was up there, and Bob Strange, and they had the bunker that was near that flagpole. And when I got up there with it, they said, "Listen, fly your flag and take a picture of it and wear it right down because the North Vietnamese are going to fire artillery at that flag," and they did. But so the flag went up, and in 2 minutes we were running down the trench line to get the hell out of there. And, yeah, so but the flag was in honor of Paul Branyan, who, as I said, he was a great guy. He was the sole surviving male in his family, and he didn't have to be in Vietnam, but he was the kind of guy that he would never say that to anybody that he didn't have to be there. He did his duty, and unfortunately he got killed, and yeah,
Paul Brannon, KIA, December 10th, 1967.
yep,
Childhood friend of Mr. Lou. I was gonna let y'all know if y'all wanted to look into him or not, but as you can see, Mr. Lou got to honor not only his friend but get the firemen their wish to have a flag flying at a top secret SOG base. That's probably the first and only instance I can ever think of anything like that happening. And thank you for sharing this because, guys, this I don't even think Jason Hardy has this photo, to be
I don't
honest
think he
with you.
does, to be honest with you.
So we've got one over on Jason today. I
Yeah,
kid, Jason, if you see this. I kid. Without you, we'd have nothing. But
yeah,
I just kid. Okay, we've started getting some good questions in. If you'd we'll kind of interweave and get in and out of you and Pat and RT Lion, but we've got and let me show you this because this is to promote Jason Collins. I'm wearing his shirt, Pucker Factor. Y'all can
yeah.
get that online. He's got a new heavy duty edition out that features a big portion on RT Lion and this is a recreation of, I believe. I don't think y'all had patches while y'all were at Khe Sanh, did you, Mr. Lou?
No, they didn't. They didn't start coming out until like '69. They
Okay.
didn't. There was there were no team patches or any of that stuff. There might have been a few, but it wasn't a big deal because it was all supposed to be secret. You weren't supposed to take any pictures, and you weren't supposed to wear any kind of identification. But
And it also seems like I need to save that one for later. And as we're going to get into, because a lot of the guys have some great questions about trenches, but I mean, y'all were living underground. It wasn't like
yeah,
back at Khartoum to where you had your party vest or your party suit for the club, or your tiger stripes around the base. You
yeah,
were in what you were in, not taking showers, so
yeah,
you didn't have a suit you could wear a patch on. You were
yeah, yeah.
you were operating, and so I've always been interested in the FOB teams, and when patches do come up, if they're authentic or if they were just created in that. But I can see now that, like you said, y'all y'all didn't have time for patches, and
Uh,
didn't
they,
need to be
they,
wearing.
that was after I left. It actually in '69, the beginning of '69, all those different team patches come into existence, and it's pretty interesting. I was visiting Jason, and he gave me an RT Nevada patch, and I had never seen it before. I was at his house, and he's got a he's got a studio or a
Oh
museum
yeah.
that it's if anybody's ever down there by his house and you get an invitation to go. It's really something to see. His study room or whatever you want to call it is better than a lot of museums that I
I
ever.
was about to say his setup is literally the greatest SOG collection that you
Oh,
could ever hope to
yeah,
lay eyes on in person.
yeah,
I'll put it that way.
yeah. The truth. He's got a he's got a case with glass doors in it, and he's got all his knives in there, and he's got weapons all over the place.
Knives, guns, patches, uniforms. Uh, gosh, what are
The plaques he must have had.
the plaques? Y'all's leggings. I mean, he's got everything.
Yeah,
It's like you said. It rivals military base
oh
museums. It
yeah,
is
yeah,
unbelievable. As a matter of fact, I think one of the first teams or eras to make a patch, I think RT Georgia was at Khe Sanh for a while after you left, and that
yeah,
was Eldon Bargewell. And I
yeah,
think he was one of that first group to make patches. But
yeah. I
I
wouldn't doubt.
digress on the patches. I could talk patches all day. Here we go. We'll get started, and like I said, we'll weave our way in and out of Khe Sanh here. But our first question of the day: what was FOB3 like to be stationed at, i.e., living quarters, food, and daily life for SOG men?
Most of the time, most of the time that you had sea rations. You at one point when they couldn't get helicopters or planes in there, you only got one canteen of water a day, which that's to brush your teeth, to make your food, and quench your thirst. That wasn't much water. When it's 100 degrees out, that's not a lot of water. But,
Mm.
so, being a case on, we lived on sea rations, and when
I've
I
get,
got there, Pat and George, they never, in the sea rations back then, you got a little pack of cigarettes, you got a pack of a packet of sugar, and a packet of coffee creamer, and of course a packet of instant coffee. Well, they had them all. They had hundreds of packs of coffee there. Well, yeah, I thought it was the greatest thing in the world to be in the middle of the night, be able to make a cup of hot coffee and sit there and drink it. Of course, we were in the bunkers, and they were all there was no light got out of them. And but George said to Pat one time, that little SB's, he's drinking all the coffee and eating all the food, and he never stopped. He's always in the middle of the night. He's up there making a cup of coffee, talking to himself. And I I just thought it was the greatest thing in the world, because the 173rd, when the sun went down, you didn't have no lights, you yeah, if you didn't heat your food up before the sun went down, you just ate it cold. That was the way it was. So I thought that was you know to be able to make a cup of hot coffee in the middle of the night. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world, and I was never I was a regular infantry guy, and I always tried to take advantage of the system. If there was a way that I could get over, I did it. And I, you think you're getting over, but you're really not getting over in the military because you're up at Khe Sanh in the middle of the night. You're not anywhere. You're not in Saigon or any of that places. But it was it was it was it was still quite an experience for me. I was at FOB2 and we ran out of there, but we were never had to be static like you were at Khe Sanh. When you weren't training or you weren't patrolling, you were in them bunkers, and that's where you stayed. And and,
What would I mean? You mentioned training, and I can imagine some days were worse than others with incoming. But what would training consist of y'all just staying in the compound shooting, or would y'all try and
yeah,
get out to?
there at the at the you had to live in bunkers, and you were one for the Americans and one for the engaged, and then in front of them were the fighting bunkers, and in front of the fighting bunkers was the wire, and we had to just 55-gallon drums cut in half, and they were they were sitting in the wire, and you just you could try to teach the little people how to shoot, but and so they did okay for people that had crossbows one day, and the next day they got a car 15. So you know they finally they got the concept of firing rounds, and they might not hit anything, but they put them rounds out there as fast as anybody, and that was part of the training. The training wasn't no marching or stuff like that. When they weren't firing, when they weren't mortaring the compound, we could do the immediate action drills and different formations and stuff. Uh, but it was very seldom that we were out in the open because as soon as you got out in the open, the North Vietnamese would start firing at you. And so your training was way different than it was at any of the other FOBs because you just you just couldn't get out. And that particular picture there, it's a. And when I got up there, I said, Pat, I would. He would say, do this, and I do it, and I said, what else do you want me to do? And he said, yeah, I just wanted you to do that for the day. I said, oh, I'm done that. Tell me something else to do, and I would do the things like that. And one day I said, I was cleaning up the fighting bunkers, and you had to be careful because snakes got in there. Rats were in there, and the snakes were chasing the rats. And so when you got in there, if there was any trash or anything, you had to make sure there wasn't a snake under that trash because we actually had an indigenous that got bit by a crate, and he was a young guy, and he knew what the other yards would do. You know, they would to save his life, they would have cut his hand off. So he didn't want his hand cut, so he just run. He run away from everybody, and of course, when you run, you pump more of the poison in your system. And he actually died from that crate, but he got away. He didn't get his hand chopped off, but he did die, and so it was always good to not sit anywhere without looking or not move anything without taking an extra look. And I was one day I was in there cleaning up them. We had a 50 caliber, and then we had a 30 caliber machine gun in the other bunker. And I said to Pat, I said, well, when was the last time any of these that 50 caliber was cleaned or fired? And he said, oh, I don't know. It hadn't, not since I've been here. So I said, Pat was he was the team leader, and I said, well, I'd like to take that gun out of there and clean it, clean that 50 up and make sure it's working and all that. And he said, well, go ahead. And I said, well, I said, the only experience I have with a 50 caliber is we got to fire 5 rounds out of it, basic training or AIT. I said, and that was it. So I said, I don't know. I know you got a headspace and that stuff. And I said, do you know anything about that? And Pat he was a weapons, was his, he was a weapons man in the special forces. So he said, yeah, I know how. And he showed me how to take that gun apart and how to set the headspace and uh, and I did. I cleaned that one up and I cleaned the 30 caliber up but I always wanted something to do. I didn't like to, it was pretty boring just to sit around and we after a few days or a week, you have said everything you want to say to the other Americans with and they're just you know there's just whenever one of us got a care package, we would share that. That was a big talking thing because you know we hardly got any mail either. But my mom, she sent care packages every week to me, and so I would always share them with Pat. And that was something for us to talk about, and uh, it just there was just it was Khe Sanh was completely different than any FOBs or any of the places I was at, fire bases or any because you were confined to that bunker, which may have been 10 foot by 6 foot, and
I've got a good shot I'm going to show. Is this so? This, I mean, this is about, like you said, this is about all you could do training area wise inside the base and everything. I mean, because
yeah,
you guys, you can see the perimeter right there, and
yeah,
I imagine that's no man's land right there, and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
kind of the
Actually,
same. Oh, right here too, to where there's the
actually,
entrance to a bunker. It looks like as well.
yeah, right up, right. That that was the end of FOB3, and there was a road there, and it was the marine part of the perimeter. It was right next to us. We were the last bunker, and
Oh,
we used to get,
okay.
we get a lot of crap out of the Marines because of the little people. They didn't see any of us. They just saw the brute tribesmen, and
Ooh.
uh, so they were
Very nervous about that.
they were nervous about it, and then they actually passed the word. If we ever get attacked, we're going to fire right through you. So
Oh, whoa.
yeah, so you had to be, you had to make the Marines aware that you were there too, and luckily they never fired right through us. But when Khe Sanh was when it was closed down, there wasn't much ground attacks by the North Vietnamese. They were they January and February there were ground attacks, and they had the hills up, the outpost hills of 81 and 886, I think it was. But anyhow, they would get attacked all the time, but they were outside of the wire. They were hills that were near Khe Sanh, and but anyhow, they're just it was a completely different thing for me to be up there, because I was used to being on ambushes and being being a listening post and stuff like that, which you did at nighttime too, and but you were within shouting range of the rest of the company, and but up there you just had the 3 guys you were with, and you could actually get cut off and just be those 3 guys in that bunker, and we we I knew the 2 Americans that were to our left uh, in the next bunker, but I didn't know anybody else, any other Americans there, and that's just the way it was. You didn't, you know. when they were firing on that camp, you didn't get out of that bunker. You the, if you had to go anywhere, you hopped in the trenches and ran down the trenches to get to the next bunker or get to the top. And so
That's
it was really something. And, yeah,
this is about as good as it gets right here for the
yeah,
SOG guys right here.
yeah. That's about as good as it gets. And
And you can look how beat up and dirty and just the 1,000-yard stare
yeah,
already in John McGovern's eyes.
yeah,
He's I heard he had a rough go. He was there quite a while, much
yeah,
like Pat. Pat was there for a long time.
yeah,
But this I could not I can't imagine y'all being living underground like this during the siege and my hat's off to you not only for being a SOG man, but being a SOG man at Khe Sanh is a
yeah.
whole nother
And John,
tier of respect that you deserve. I
I
mean,
didn't I didn't know John McGovern when I was there, but I had to I had met him at the reunions,
re-
and his lovely wife is still friends with her. John has passed away.
Miss Janet, she is as a matter of fact, guys. Miss Janet was the lady who invited me, and I was her guest to SOAR last year.
Yeah, she's a wonderful lady.
She is just outstanding, and she still misses John. So
Yeah,
she loves that we're talking about him and all of that. So Miss
yeah.
Janet, if you watch this, I hope you are watching.
One
Mr. John deserves.
one of those reunions, and I don't remember what year it was, but they had the banquet. Before the banquet, they had a cocktail hour,
Oh
and
yeah.
I wasn't much of a drinker. I'd have a beer or two there, but I went to the cocktail hour because it was that was going to be the morning everybody be gone. And,
Hmm.
so that was the last get together the banquet. But the cocktail hour before that was good too for hearing the stories and saying hi, bye to everybody. But I go in there and I was walking around and I got a beer and I kept on walking and I got there where there was not many people and there was one table and I walked up to the guy and I recognized him as soon as I see him. It was Roger DeLon, who was the first Medal of Honor winner in the Special Forces, and he was there. And he was just a great guy. He didn't know me, and I wasn't anybody anyhow. But we were just talking away, and I said, after a minute, I said, would you mind taking a picture with me? And he said, no. I said, and I went to reach for my camera, and I didn't have the camera. It wasn't in my. I left it back in the room. So I looked. I looked down the hallway or down the walkway, and here comes Janet and John McGovern and their son-in-law. And anyhow, I went up, and I said, I didn't really know John real good, and I didn't know Janet hardly any at all. And I said, can you guys do me a favor? Can you take a picture of me and Roger? And they and Janet said, Roger who? I said, it's Roger Delon. He's the first Medal of Honor winner. I said, this is an opportunity of a lifetime to get a picture. And I said, I don't have a camera. And so she took the pictures of us. And John McGovern says, can I get in the picture? I said, yeah, sure. Your wife's taking the picture. You can do anything you want. And so him and his son-in-law and me and Roger Delon, we had a picture together. And I got that picture somewhere. I don't know where it's at, but I'll find it, maybe pass it on to you sometime.
Love that. I got lucky enough. I forgot where I got this book. He's written several, but I believe this is specifically about his Medal of Honor, the event, and then directly after. And I was flipping through one day and opened it up, and it is signed by Roger Donlin. I could not believe it, and needless to say, as soon as I read it delicately, it is now put up and will not ever be touched again.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
And
wow. I mean,
there was
those early SOARs, well, not just the early ones, but even up until COVID. COVID really started kicking a wrench into things. But those early ones, you really never knew who was going to show up. I
I
mean, you'd
know.
have Roger Donlin, you'd have G. Gordon Liddy showing up.
Yeah.
Uh, John Caviani would grace everybody with his presence. I mean, just sports stars would show up. I mean, y'all really had a real eclectic group of guys that would show
Yeah.
up for the SOAR to see y'all. It's really, really cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And guys, if y'all can ever get close with a SOG man that still goes, they won't be doing them much longer. But if you can ever get an invite to go, that's a week you would.
Unfortunately, but a lot of guys are passing on, and uh, I haven't been to any of the reunions since COVID, but and of course in between COVID and my lungs, I'm pretty limited to where I can, how I could travel. But I always had a good time at those reunions, and yeah,
It is, and then, like you said, a lot of guys passing. When some of the guys lose their teammates or best buds that would go, like Mr. Tony Love, he doesn't go anymore. You know, he knows guys, but his best buds aren't alive anymore. So it brings
and
up too much for him,
that's
and he.
that's the thing. I mean, Doug Letourneau, the Frenchman, he passed on a few years ago, and we didn't serve together, but I met him at the Swords, and we just became really great friends, and of course if you knew Doug, then you knew Tony Harold, and they both passed away very sudden, and so it's kind of sad to it's sad to even think about them guys, and but the COVID stopped me from going, and yeah, I don't know if I hope to get there someday, and maybe I will.
I've,
I
I've,
got I got
I've,
I got to tell one more story that I'll answer
it,
your
it,
question to it.
it's fine, sir. It's fine.
Pat and Pat, I hadn't seen Pat uh, uh, for probably 30 years, and the first reunion I went to, I met him there, and he was the, he was still quite a character. When we finally met up, I I go I go down to that hospitality room, and I had his room number, but I could never find him in there. And finally, I went back up to my room, and I called his room, and I said, "Listen, I'm going to put on an orange hat and a yellow shirt or orange shirt. I'm colorblind, so I don't really. I knew the hat was orange, but I didn't know the T-shirt I had on. I said, I'll be down there. And I said, everybody else got a black hat on, and I can't find you. So when he finally found me, he come up in back of me, and I had a ponytail, small back then. He grabbed that and said, "What's this?" I said, "I'm trying to fit into with the hippies." I said, "That's what that is." He said, "Cut that off. Don't come back." But,
uh,
yeah, it was
so
really so
fast.
great to see him and stuff, and of course, you know, some of the guys that John Hutcherson, he passed away, and he was another first one of the first guys that I met out there, and really he was a cool guy. And unfortunately he got sick and dementia and all those things that it
Mm,
brought him down. But
mm.
those reunions,
Mister,
they
yes, sir.
they were really something, and I really enjoyed them. But anyhow, uh,
The early ones, I've heard some tales of the early ones that were just wild when
yeah,
everybody first started going in the '90s. Woo!
yeah, I can
Yeah.
imagine. Yeah. I mean, even being in Las Vegas, being with a bunch of troopers would probably be really something. And,
Oh man.
one time, uh, Pat and I got invited to the White House when Gary Rose got his. He had a DFC, and it was upgraded to a Medal of Honor. So we were although I never served with him, he was at FOB2, and Pat and I got an invitation to go to that ceremony. So I said, well, I never been to the White House, so I'm gonna go, just for go one time and make my own mind up about the White House. And but anyhow, we we get there, and of course it was pretty formal, and I don't know if it was the Secret Service or the FBI or something, but they screen you really good. And uh, Pat, Pat had he had flown into Philadelphia, and I went up and picked him up and brought him down to my house. And then my sister Marie had a really formal dinner for him, and so my family got to meet Pat, my brother and my sister, and so all the guys were in Washington. So we just stayed here one day, and then we went down to Washington, and we were when he was going to fly out, like on a Thursday or Friday early in the morning. So my sister had another dinner for him. So we were, my we were having a coffee and talking, and Pat says, Deseta, you ain't going to be able to drive out to them reunions anymore. I said, oh yeah. I said, yeah, I got to drive out. I said, I'm not done doing the things I had to do. And he says, well, what would you have to do? And I said, oh, I like to stop at Lorton, Oklahoma, Fort Sill. And why would you want to stop there? I said, I'm trying to find a full-blooded Comanche Indian because I just want to know one. The Comanche were, if you know their history, they were pretty bad dudes. And
Yeah.
anyhow, we were. I could still see him. He's on the other side of the table, and he says, "Well, you know, I still had to hold your hand, whatever you do." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, when we left the White House and the bus that they took us back to the hotel on, I said, yeah. He said, well, you were sitting right next to a full-blooded Comanche Indian, and it happened to be Spider Park.
Spider Parks.
And I said, are you kidding me? And he said, no, he was lived on the reservation. And I said, oh, Pat was the next day he was flying out, and I said, oh, when it becomes a decent, time, then there he is. Uh, I said, I'm going to call him up, and I did the next day. Pat flight left at 5 o'clock in the morning or something like that. So I had him up there in plenty of time. And when I got back, I waited. Because Spider lived in Alabama, so there was a time difference too. And I called him, and I said, well, yeah, I really had a great time in Washington. Good to see you and all the other guys. And I said, Pat, I got Pat up to the airport, and he's on it. He probably halfway home by now. And Spider, Spider's always been a courteous person to me. And I said, Spider, I said, I got to ask you something. And he said, well, what do you want to ask me? And I said, I just want to tell you, you don't have to, I'll understand if you say no to anything. And I say, we're still going to be friends no matter what. And he says, well, what do you want to ask me? And I said, I want to be blood brothers with you. And he looked at, he's on the phone. He says, it was silent for a minute. And he says, is this going to hurt me? And I said, no, it's not. I said, I'll bring food color. And as long as you say we're blood brothers, we don't have to draw blood. And he says, he thought we were going to cut our hands like Clint Eastwood did. And I said, we're not going to do that. We're just, we could just pretend it. If you say it, that'll be it. That'll be so for me. And anyhow, to one shore, we did. He got the diabetes test things, and that's what we just poked our fingers and mixed the blood. So I'm a blood brother. I was a blood brother to a full-blooded Comanche Indian, which is one of the things that I'm very proud of. And unfortunately, he passed away too. He was another guy that was just great to be with out there. And
I've got that paperwork you sent me. That he wrote up about his personal history, but also verifying that you are now my blood brother. And guys, I'll share that at some point. I'd actually forgotten it's in my big binder of autographed photos and photos that y'all have sent me, and I'll get that up for y'all to see,
I,
Mr. Spiders.
I was in a hospital, and Marie, my sister Marie, said, you got us an email from Bob and Lucy Parks. I said, oh yeah, and she said they said if you need anything to let them know, and they'll take care of it. So I was it was pretty shocking what the surgeons told me, but I I thought they were full of crap, but I still, you know, I knew something was wrong with me. But anyhow, I was laying in the bed, and I said, Marie, you got to do me a favor when you go home. Send Lucy and Bob an email and say that the one thing that I need that Bob can give me is I need my Comanche name. If I'm going to the hereafter, I want to have my Comanche name with me. So she emailed him, and a few days later, he sent that. They made that poster, and they sent it. And the name is the name is registered out there. You know, I'm not a. I'm just a blood brother, but I don't get no money or nothing for the Comanche Nation. But yeah, I got to be blood brothers with Spider Park, which is a pretty good accomplishment, I think. I mean, it was no matter who
Absolutely.
was my blood brother, that would have been good. But with me and Spider, it was really something. And
Absolutely.
I have Pat to thank for that because he would always say, "I'm still taking care of you 50 years later, and still taking care of you, still wiping your rear end for you." I said,
It's and guys, we're getting to the questions, but I was getting some info on Pat, and Pat was a Marine before and had seen combat with a prior service in Vietnam with the Marines, and he helped set up the 1-0 school at the Leach Farm, aka Cam Duck, where he met Dick Meadows, and heck, I mean he even up until 72, 73, when he was still in, he actually went overseas and was cross training with the SAS. He, like Dick Meadows did, he was with the SAS for a while. So
yeah,
he's got a hell of a history. But our next question is, there's not a lot known about FOB3 recon teams besides Lion. Do you remember other team names that were
you
used?
know, I'm trying. I meant to call George this morning, and because I don't remember any other teams, but we were very, it wasn't a social like FOB 2. You could go to the club, and you could go, just roam around with it without worrying about a rocket hitting you. So I don't really. There were other teams, and there probably was 8 or 9 of them there, but I don't really remember any of them. Just line, of course.
I think for specifically your period and then a little bit after, they were like predatory cats. There's lion that I know of. There's bear cat. There's tiger, and not mountain lion, but there's another one. They're there for a while. They were and then there's bear besides bear cat. So they were kind of wild beast team names,
Yeah,
and then of course Georgia showed up, and the FOB is a strange duck, as we're finding out.
yeah.
Infantry. Let's see, another good question. What type of operations were y'all conducting during the siege? Did they shift to operations
We
in defense of the camp?
we would patrol outside the wire. You know,
Oh,
yeah. We were the FOB 3 was the only people that were uh, authorized to go outside of the wire. But when you were out there, you were rubbing elbows with all these North Vietnamese people. You had to really watch what where you were going, because even 100 yards outside of that wire, you were you were in the North Vietnamese territory. But we uh, we ran. I think it was 4 patrols with Pat. And he's he's we were RT line was the first. It was the first successful mission out of get in Oscar 8, and it was the last successful mission ran out of Khe Sanh. So it was it was pretty unique to be even to be with Pat, but to be in to be in Oscar 8 was really it was pretty scary to me, and I still laugh because Pat he got called down to the talk and comes back up and he says we got a mission, and he says, and I forget what he it was it had a different number than Oscar 8. It was Harley
Tango
40.
7.
Yeah, Tango 7. And so I was looking at him, and he said, don't worry about it. We'll never get in there. And it ain't Tango 7, it's Oscar 8. Well, everybody knew about Oscar 8. It was really a bad place. And Pat says, I guess I was looking a little green around the gills. And he says, don't worry about it. We'll never get in there. He said, they've got anti-aircraft. They got triple A's. We'll just never get in there. And I laugh still to this day. 2 days later, we were on the ground in Oscar 8, and I looked at Pat, and I said, man, what the hell? He didn't know what he was talking about then because we were here. And I always had confidence in Pat because he just was he was a he just was together. He was a great NCO. He was a great team leader, and he built your confidence. And,
From
so
all accounts, I mean, he was literally one of the first in '68. Had already been running Recon by 7 months, and out of the when he first got there in '67, of the original 14 1-0s that started with him in late '67, there were only him and another man that were still alive.
yeah, yeah,
So that's how good he was early on and continued to get good.
yeah. He paid really attention to the details, and he made sure we were all taken care of, and we all knew what we were doing. When we were out there. Of course, Pat and I talked about this a hundred times. And you can train and you can practice and you can do immediate action drills, and yeah, you can have scenarios that you're going to do this or that. But as soon as the bullets start flying, all that stuff just it goes to, for lack of any other words, it goes to shit street right there in 2 seconds. And you know even I said, Pat, all that stuff. I said I revert back to my own. In the 173rd, we always said the the, the group that has the most hot lead in the air, they're the winners in this stuff. And I really believe that. But we we did that. We got in the Oscar 8 and we got out of it. And I, I it was quite an accomplishment, and it was I was glad that I was with him, and I was more glad that we got the hell out of there. And when we got when we got back to Khe Sanh, of course we went back. We were at King Bees, and all of us were in the one King Bee. And we landed, and the King Bee was full of bullet holes. I mean, just we started counting them, but then we just gave up because there were so many of them. And we where they landed in the middle of camp. You had to run to the trench line and get in the trench line and then go to your bunker. And so that's what we did. And Pat, we're in our bunker. Of course, you always clean your equipment, even if you go out there for one half of an hour. You still clean your equipment. That's part of that's part of any any operation that you're on. And but anyhow, we're we're in the bunker, and Pat Pat the phone rings, and it was the talk, and they told Pat to get ready, get down to the airstrip. A plane hadn't landed there in 2 months, and they said the plane's coming in to pick you up, and you're going to Saigon, and you're going to be debriefed in Saigon, and that was the main. Uh,
We'll end up getting asked about some of that because I had a question from last time. Someone left with me in case we didn't get to them, but there were some more. Well, actually, Jason's got a few before we get back into more of Khe Sanh stuff. Can you describe your first ride into Khe Sanh?
yeah,
I'm sure you received incoming fire.
yeah. Well, my first, I was I left FOB2, and they got on a plane and flew me to Da Nang. And when I got to Da Nang, they said, you know, your helicopter's going to take you to Khe Sanh. And I'm there like, damn. I really, Khe Sanh was the hottest area in Vietnam at that time. So I was a little pissed off, to tell you the truth, that they sent me there. I only had like 4 months left to go in the military. So, to me, I was a short timer, but that doesn't matter in the military. You could have 5 minutes, and if they want you to go somewhere, you're gone. And but anyhow, I I I had got a. Of course, they took my car 15 away from me, because they at FOB2, they were really, they made sure that all the Americans on the teams had a car 15, because they were really a reliable weapon. But anyhow, they took my car 15, and I said to them, you know, well, what am I going to? I'm not going all the way across the country with just a 9 millimeter pistol. So I had an M1 carbine. That was it. And some magazines. That get on the helicopter at Da Nang, and we're flying, and we're up pretty high in the air, you know. But we get about 5 miles from Khe Sanh, and all you seen was, it was just green jungle. But then when we got within 5 miles of it, all you seen was bomb craters as far as you could see. Just hundreds and hundreds of them. I mean, a lot of them, and that was it. Pretty unsettling to seeing them.
Hearing Pat tell the story of Sawcast is hilarious when Lou was saying, "You said we weren't going to come in here."
Yeah, yeah,
That's the Oscar 8 incident when y'all had, I believe y'all had already, Pat had already snuck off and left y'all after seeing all the NVA and had come across that 37 Mike that
yeah,
y'all soon began to
yeah.
fire up.
Pat was he was a great soldier, and he always wanted, whatever the mission was, he was going to try to accomplish it. And that's what he he wanted to go up to the roadway, up to 22. 922 was one of the roadways, and then 22 was the other roadway. And he wanted to go up there and look at it, and look at the roadway. So, and he did. And that's when they got caught out there. It got dark, and they were up by that road, and when it got light, that's when the North Vietnamese got the interpreter and told him it was his time for guard duty. It really shook him up. But anyhow, Pat, when when Pat come back to where we were, the perimeter we had, he said, "We gotta go, man," and he said, "We're getting out of here." And we just took off running. And, later, he told me about the North Vietnamese telling the interpreter, and his name was Rong, Rong. I don't know if that. I mean, I pronounced it as wrong, but anyhow, Pat told me he was so shook up. He at the best couldn't really speak English that much. He knew some words, but he wasn't. He wasn't. he was the best person to be an interpreter. He knew the most words out of all the crew. But but when we got back, we were back in the bunker, and that's when they told Pat that a plane was coming in to get ready because the plane was coming in to pick him up, and the plane actually, I found this out later. The plane actually never landed. It just come down and put the wheels on the ground and just kept on, you know, at a fast pace. And Pat had to jump in there, and then that was the only way guys got in and out of there at that time. But so Pat, he gets on the plane and he gets down to Saigon, and he's debriefed by General Westmoreland,
More.
not not just some saw guy, by the man. And Pat always laughs about this. While he was down there, they closed Khe Sanh down. So we were, they told me you're going back to FOB2, and Pat was going to
Back
FOB
to
one
north.
report. And so anyhow, that was the last when he got on the plane. That was the last I had seen him for 30 years. But we always laugh about it. He said, "I felt sorry for you guys eating them sea rations, and I was having steaks and."
I know we're going to come back to that because there's so much that guys are going to want to hear about, and specifically wrong and Man Loy, the tail gunner that you were with when
Yeah.
the NVA initially caught on to y'all. But uh, Pat, one thing before I get to the next question, guys, I don't know if all of you know this. Lou, of course, knows this, but Pat, aside from all of his other interesting stuff, Pat Watkins closed down 3 bases or ran the last recon missions and essentially closed down 3 bases. He closed down FOB1. He closed down ran the last recon mission out of Khe Sanh, and then he also ran the last mission out of CCS Task Force AE3 at Bambi Tui. So Pat never ceases. His history never ceases to amaze me.
Yeah, he was just I can't say enough good things about him. He was just a superior soldier. He really was. He
No
had,
better leader to be under, and no better person to have by your side in a gun
yep,
battle.
yeah, for sure. He had a good sense of humor too. So
Oh God, I can imagine that dark marine humor would come up pretty good. I bet.
yeah, yeah,
Cuss like a sailor too.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah,
It reminds me of my dad, to be honest with you, when I listen to him talk and he'll just throw in the casual GD or F or whatever. I'm like, God, that sounds just like my dad.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Jason wants to know, I don't know if we've asked before, Jason's probably at work or getting ready for football in Oklahoma. How tall were you in SOG, Glue, and how much were you weighing?
How much did I weigh?
Were you weighing and how tall were you in SOG? Yes,
I,
sir.
I was like 5'5". I wasn't very tall, and I probably weighed 130 pounds. And, yeah. Pat used to get mad and joking, but I think he was pretty serious. He said, "Deseta, you got that black hair just like these North Vietnamese. You look just like them, and you're short on top of that." And he said, "What are you going to do if I get shot?" I said, I'm going to drag you out. I'm going to get you on a helicopter. I'm going to do whatever I got to do to get you out." And he said, "Well, if you get shot, I can just pick you up, put you under my arm, and walk away." I said, "Well, that's good." It always made me laugh when he said, "You look just like these North Vietnamese communists."
And speaking of that, looking like the communists, can you tell us a little bit about your infamous black boonie that you wore and where it originally came from and the idea for wearing it?
Yeah, it was a North Vietnamese hat, and I had got it. I had actually got. I can't remember what hill it was at. It was after Hill 830, but and maybe before Hill 875. I killed a North Vietnamese soldier that had it on. and we used to, if we could, you went up and got any papers they had. And when I went up there, I seen the hat, so I thought I grabbed was the hat, and I kept it for a long time just in my rucksack. But then when I when I got to FOB2, I started wearing it there, and the guys would always get a big kick out of it. They said, "You're going to get shot wearing that." I said, "No." I said, I'm going to have it on backwards, and if the North Vietnamese sneak up on us, they're going to see that red star and they're going to hesitate, man, and I'm going to blow them away. Yeah, yeah. That was my plan, but anyhow, that's where that hat came about. And it was Pat 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 actually said one time. He said, that Major Jacks wants you to take that hat off, and I just Major Jacks, what? Who the hell's he? He was the assistant commander at Khe Sanh, and Pat told him, said, if you want him to take that hat off, you go tell him. I'm not telling him. He loves that hat. And I said, Pat, I wouldn't take it off. I said, it's a good luck charm, and it really was. Pat was the good luck charm. That hat really wasn't, because the original one, I left that at. I can't remember who the guy was that I left. I left it at FOB2 with one of those guys, and it might have been a guy named Austin, but uh, I he wanted that hat, so I gave it to him when I left. I said, I'm not giving anything up till I leave. But when I got within 2 days of leaving, I gave him the hat, and that's Jackson. He was he was
Quite the guy himself too.
yeah, he was something else. But he never said to me, take that hat off. He just said, he would just make the comments about the targets and stuff like that. And Pat said he loves that hat. He ain't taking that hat off, and I wouldn't have either. But anyhow, that hat was it made a lot of it made a lot of people turn around and take notice of stuff. And
Did Pat have a? I know I've never seen Pat in a what you see, the typical SOG man Rambo head wrap with their tourniquet.
right,
I've never seen Pat in a headband. He's always had a boonie. Is
yeah,
that all he wore?
that's all he wore. I never.
Okay.
We had their cravats, and we used them. I call them drive on rags, to wipe the sweat off of it. But a lot of guys put them on their head, and in the Hell's Angel style, and it broke the outline of their head. But to me, it was they were just they didn't seem right. Uh,
And,
so
I,
I
and
never I never
Pat's
wore
got
'em.
his around his neck, and then
Yeah,
even Godwin's got the boonie. I guess all of y'all decided we're gonna rock boonies instead of
yeah,
an all boonie team.
yeah. I mean, I had other boonie hats, tiger.
Oh yes,
But
that's a very famous one too. That I think Jason has now, doesn't he?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a beautiful one, and it is great. I mean, it is the real deal tiger stripe.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Yeah.
let's see
He had
here.
he, Jason actually has Larry Trimble's jacket, his shirt.
1-0 jacket. Hmm.
Yeah, he has his 1-0 jacket. He's got Pat's shirt and his boonie hat on a mannequin in there. It's really got there's
Ev-
there's so many mannequins in there. I couldn't
You
read
got
them all.
Larry White's leggings as well. I mean,
Yeah.
it's literally a living museum in there.
Oh
It is
yeah.
unbelievable, and thank God he's got it, because if someone bought it on the street or whatever, they'd not know what it is.
Yeah.
It'd get mistreated, and hopefully, either one day when he gets older, there'll be a MACV-SOG official museum, and
Yeah.
he'll have a lot of stuff to be able to put in there
Yeah. Oh
to
yeah.
honor y'all. y'all's actual stuff. I mean, and it's y'all's actual stuff. So that's what's great. No recreations or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Another uh FOB. Let's see. I heard FOB personnel conducting raids on NVA trenches during the Khe Sanh siege, WW1 style. Do you know anything about those, or did y'all
I
do any?
know that when I got there, after the siege started, but there was never any masked, waves on those trenches. As I said, we ran recon on that roadway. It was actually Route 9 was the road that ran out in front of Khe Sanh, and that's the North Vietnamese had trenches there, didn't they? Because they were guys had listening devices that they could hear them digging in the nighttime. We didn't have any down at our bunker, but George Sternberg, he remembers listening to them. You could hear them digging and stuff. And but as far as any charges of the trench line, we never that never happened while I was there. It could have
Yeah,
happened, but
I think that happened, like you said, during the siege and all of that. And once the NVA knew they couldn't overrun it, they just enveloped y'all with anti-aircraft and big guns, and
yeah,
we're just gonna starve y'all out like Dien Bien Phu.
yeah,
Um, Daniel said we call in Sweden we call the Swedish K the pea shooter.
yeah, yeah. And that's a good name for it.
Oh, hang on. I need to ask this. Aleem wants to know, and there are, I know for a fact, but did you were there any black SOG at FOB 2 and 3 when you were around?
At FOB 2, my 1-0 on RT Nevada, he was a black guy, and Bradford was his name.
Oh, wow. Either Albert or Howard
Albert,
Bradford.
Albert was his.
Uh,
I talked to. He passed away, but I did talk to his wife, and he was I only met him when Taylor brought me into the team hooch.
oh, yeah.
I was staying there with an A bag, and there was a bunk with an A bag on it, and I said to Taylor, "What bunk do I got?" And Bradford picked his A bag up and said, "You can have this one right here." And he walked out the door, and I never seen him after that. He cleared FOB 2 and probably went into Da Nang and cleared there, and then they Trang, and then he was probably out of there. The
Mm,
guys
I,
didn't wait. Guys didn't wait around too long. You know, I actually relieved Mike Bingo when I went up to Khe Sanh. Mike Bingo was the one was past 1-1, but when I got there,
oh,
Mike
wow.
Bingo left.
He actually left and went to ride Covey.
Yeah,
Actually,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, he's a
yeah,
very legendary Covey rider. Wow,
yeah.
I did not know that. That is very interesting.
Oh yeah, and I didn't. I knew I replaced him, but I never met him. And actually, about 10 years ago, he come to one of the reunions, and he was a he was a great guy, and he
So,
had he was a karate guy. He had dojos all over the place, and he was just when he was around Pat, he was just down to earth guy. Pat wouldn't let anybody be too uppity around us.
oh yeah, he'd keep everybody in check.
Yeah, yeah, and, Mike. I was glad I got to meet him, and then he passed on a few years ago. He had a heart attack. He was visiting one of his daughters or something. He just had a massive heart attack and passed on right there.
Mm, I'm very sorry to hear that.
Yeah,
Gosh.
yeah. He was as I said, I never knew him in Vietnam. I just knew that I was relieving him. I was taking his place, and I don't know what FOB. He went back and he was a covey rider. I
I
think.
think I think he went over back to CCC actually.
Yeah, yeah. He went.
Let's see. Oh, Jason's. How close? How close was the nearest bunker to y'all's latrines? Did you have any desperate dives to get into that bunker?
Yeah, there was the latrines were out on the, they were like out in the perimeter. They were there was no build up. There was no there was no there was just it was just a slip trench out there, and
Oh,
so if you had to take if you had to go, you had to run out there and go and get back to that trench line. It was a you weren't gonna stall around and read the paper or anything out there any.
handle business and get
Yeah,
out of there.
yeah, yeah. As far as the latrine with showers and all that, they weren't there. There were just slit trenches, and I don't know who developed these things, but there were uh, uh, there were tubes sticking out of the ground that you peed in.
Piss tubes, yes, sir. Yeah, oh God, I've seen some of those from photos down at Quan Loy, and
Yeah,
I was like, "Is that a water fountain?" And someone's like, "Hell no, that's a piss tube, young man." I was like, "A what?"
we all had
Uh,
that same reactor because yeah, you were just it was it was all men. So I mean, you go out of that,
yeah.
you took a leak and just went about your business and kept on going. But
And there's not much you can do when
no,
you're living in WW1 style living accommodations.
yeah,
You
yep,
got to do what you got to do. Um, I was interested in this, asking vets. Did you come across in your encounters with the NVA or VC? Did they use the whistles or bugles in their attacks with y'all?
they used the whistles and they used trumpets and
Oh,
they actually used sticks. They knocked sticks together and made noise. Yeah, and made noises like that. And another thing that they did that was really unnerving is when they got within so close to you, they'd fire a rifle shot. So when they were firing that rifle shot 5 minutes apart, they were right on your rear end. You had to move. You just you'd be overrun if you just stopped. They would overrun you, and all the North Vietnamese around were listening to that rifle shot. So the jungle deflects the noise some, but you still got a general direction of where the last shot was fired. So yeah,
man.
as as far as me and running the recons, it was the trackers with the rifle shots that did the most for us. I mean, I had heard the bugles up in Dock Toe, and they were kind of scary too because they were masked when they had those bugles blowing. They were
Y-
they were
y-
they were pretty fearless when they had those bugles.
That's when you knew there was like a battalion or
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like that. That's when
yeah,
you were really in for bad news.
yep, yep, yeah.
Sorry guys, I had to scroll down to the bottom. We've got a lot of commenters, man. Y'all are getting some good questions in today. Are you still doing good, Mr. Lou? We've got a few
Yeah,
more.
yeah.
Okay, okay. Didn't wanna overdo it today. Yep, I've already answered that one. Lawton, Oklahoma, yep, that's a pass through town. Uh Luke can answer the someone was asking, do you, and I think you went through that. Do you have any Native American heritage?
No, I don't have any. Uh, I'm a full-blooded Italian. My mom was born in America, but my dad was born in Italy, and his parents were born in Italy. My mom's parents were born in Italy, so I'm 100% Italian, But I love. And I'm glad you asked me this, but even though I'm 100% Italian, I love the American Indians. The American Indians they're our heritage. They're the history of America. So you you should know it. You should know it. So that's why being a blood brother of Comanche was so very important to me. You know. Yeah. But
There's
that's hard.
there's some really great books that are coming out now on some of on some of the tribes, and there's a new movie out that Martin Scorsese's producing. It's a bit iffy for those of y'all that don't like dirty language and stuff like that, but it's basically dealing with the Osage, and then becoming rich off the first oil wells, and basically battles between the white prospectors and the Native Americans going on. That'll be very interesting. There's a book that it's based on. The book is much better, but I'm the same way. I'm very interested in the Native Americans as well, Mr. Lou.
Yeah.
Um, and that this was actually what I was going to ask you before I saw that, because I was actually curious, even though I've had a feeling you were Italian. Oh, before that, can you speak Italian?
No, my, my
Okay,
my mom and dad, they
stop that
moved out.
one.
They moved out of Little Italy, and they only spoke Italian when they didn't want us to know what was going on. The neighborhood
Okay,
we went to, a neighborhood that was Irish, German, Dutch, Italian, black people, Polish people, and everybody spoke English. You know, your parents didn't, but it was mostly when they didn't want you to know something. And,
something
that,
serious, or we got to straighten out a young Lou here. He's acting up and all that, and
yeah,
um, none of the SF and SOG fellows of the day were Native American, or first answer. Yes. Basically the question is Native Americans and SOG, and I know for a fact there are quite a few.
yeah.
Did you serve with any while you were in SOG?
No, because I didn't know it, but Spider Parks he was a full blood Comanche, and there were other guys too. That
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Uh, the list can. I know Spider, Wilford Deshini. Um, gosh, his last name's Haro, I believe. There's quite a few. As a matter of fact, Casey, I'll get a list of that, and Aleem, I'll get a list of African American SOGmen for both of y'all as well. There is it contrary to what people believe. There were a large, well, not I shouldn't say large. There was a fairly big number of African Americans in SOG, and there was a fairly good number of, especially early on, Native Americans. Roy Benavidez is being one. David can't even pronounce it, but he was one. A lot of Native Americans.
Johnny
Arvi.
Jimmy Walker, he was a black guy, and he was really good, and he actually fell out of a swift seat too, and he never his body never got recovered, but he was a really great guy, and Austin was a tall, skinny black guy that I can't remember his first name. I got it written down somewhere, but yeah, actually Austin when I left when I left Vietnam, he a lot of guys wanted that Brownie 9 millimeter pistol that I had. They were pretty popular, and so I Austin bugged the living crap out of me, and I said, when I leave, I said, when I'm getting on a plane or getting out of here, I'll give it to you. I'll sell it to you. So we I sold it to. This is really funny. I sold it to him for $65. I think that's what I paid for it. So it was a bought from a store. I don't really know where. It could have been a hot pistol, but nobody was taking your pistol out of your holster and checking it that way. So, but anyhow, when I left FOB2, when I was getting ready to go, I said, "You still want this? You still want this weapon? I'll give it to you." And he said, "Yeah."
Oh yeah.
And anyhow, years later, this is probably only 10 years ago now. Uh, I was reading something uh, Austin comes. His wife asked something, but he was. They lived in Colorado Springs, and I would call out there. I don't know if Jason gave me a number or not, but every time I called out there, he was always gone. And his wife finally said, "Well, who are you?" And I explained who I was, and I said, I served at FOB2 with your husband, but I just wanted to say hi." So she says to me, "You call on such and such a date at a certain time, and I'll make sure he's here." So I did, and he said, "I just can't place you," and I said, "Yeah, you can." I said, "Yeah, I guess I look like every other white person there too." I said, "But I'm going to tell you something, and you'll remember me." And he said, "Well, what's that?" And I said, "I'm the guy that sold you that Browning 9 millimeter pistol." And I said, "I sold it to you for $65." And right prior to that, he said, "If you ever get out to Colorado Springs, stop and see me." But when I was telling him about the pistol, I I just teased him. I said, "You never paid me for that goddamn gun. I want my money." And next time I come to Colorado Springs, I think you owe me really a lot of money, a lot of interest on that $65.
Damn right.
He would not talk to me, but his wife would get on the phone and said he won't talk to you. And I said, I told him I was only kidding. I didn't want no money from him. And
Yeah.
I don't know if he ever passed it on, that pistol, on anybody or not. He could have brought it home, but yeah,
So Austin was recon at FOB2. You
yeah.
don't remember what team though,
I
but he
don't remember.
was
I don't remember what team he was on. He,
okay. I'm gonna
he
find out who Austin is. I've got to know who in the heck got your Browning,
yeah,
and
yeah.
see
He was
this. And
he was a real tall, skinny guy. I mean, he was probably 6'5". He was really tall. Yeah, but
you said black guy or white guy?
he was a black guy.
Black guy. That's right. Okay. Wow.
And,
This is great. I did not. I didn't even know you had a Browning.
oh
High
yeah,
power. That's. We all love the Browning on here. Mr. John Goods got his still, and he brought it out and showed it to us, and we were all just stuck
yeah,
on the screen, just drooling.
yeah. They were
Um.
they were they were they were a pretty popular award for the 1.0s. But mine
Oh
was,
yeah.
I just got mine when I was in the 173rd. It wasn't. It was just, I just bought it off a guy in the 173rd and was going home. So that's how I got it.
That's insane that one of the 173rd guys had a Browning that he got off of and gave it to you, got off of it and gave it to you. That's
Yeah.
crazy. Wow,
Back
man.
back then in the 173rd, yeah, they did a really thorough search of you when you were leaving
Uh,
there. And
oh
this,
yeah.
and I mean, I drugs were starting to be popular and being smuggled back, I guess. But I I I guess that's why the guy wanted to sell it. He couldn't get it out, out of country, so he just sold it to me. And
Because a Rimp would have gotten it. I've heard a
yeah,
lot of guys they're getting stuff just taken out of their bag by
yeah,
rear
if,
echelon guys.
yeah. If you had a certain knife, they would take it. They
Oh
would take
yeah.
it out of there. So when I come through with my SOG knife, I had it hidden. And, but they
Oh
would,
yeah.
if you had a cool looking case knife, they would take it. And I said, they picked up one of my knives, and the guy said, "We're compensating this." I said, "Today you're not compensating. I'm going to take it outside and break the blade off, and then you can have it. And I'm not giving you that knife in the hole." I said, "I'll break the blade before I give it to you." And the guy said, "Yeah, go ahead." Then, I guess he figured, well, this guy's serious about his knives, which I was. Battle, yeah,
Oh yeah, I'm not going through all this and giving you my stuff.
yeah,
How dare you? You get out in the field and you go find your stuff.
yeah. Pat used to say, "I don't know why you want a knife to say you got a car 50." I said, "How do I know what's going to happen? Am I going to run out of bullets? What the, the gun never jammed, but I said it could jam. I said, I could drop my 9 millimeter or anything that you need to have knives too." But he would get a kick out because I would, in that bunker, I would sharpen them knives for hours at a time. And he said, "I don't know what you're going to do with them knives. But you ain't going to be using them." I said, "You don't know that. It's possible I might need it." And I just laugh at him. But he was
I've heard some horror stories of guys coming down to where the car 15 only because they got rocked and fell in the mud, got jammed up, and
yeah,
they literally had to use the car 15 as a crutch. And had they not had the knife to either knock somebody out with the bezel on the end,
yeah,
or hold it to someone's throat, they would have died. So,
oh, yeah,
absolutely, I would have taken a knife any and everywhere, maybe multiple, to be
yeah,
honest.
I did. I had I had I had two case knives and I had a folding knife. And the folding knife was an A.L. Hinkle that I got when I was in the 10th grade. And I had it all that time. And I, I just, I think I gave it to Jason. I'm not sure who I gave it to. And, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's amazing. Mr. Aleem was wanting to know, did y'all have anybody that snored while out, and what do you do when someone starts to snore?
You wake them up. You wake them up. Make
Gently,
them,
of course, because you can't go rattling somebody, but gently wake them up and
yeah.
say, you know,
There. I was fortunate that I was hardly anybody snored that that I was around. And yeah,
yeah, you were already with Pat and his brood that were experienced, and they were wired tight in the
yeah,
field.
oh
They
yeah, yeah. You would
uh,
they coughed a lot because you know, they they probably when they were 6 years old, and I wasn't too old when I started smoking too, but I didn't cough. But we would take a cough medicine with us and give them a sip of that so they'd stop coughing. So they, it helped them.
Pat on the little thing I was listening to was talking just about that, and he was like, God, they were so good in the woods, but boy, when it would get either a little bit cold or what have you, they'd all start coughing, and the one in particular we had to mix up stuff with, and half the time he'd be out there stoned. We'd have him on cough medicine so much to keep him from coughing.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought that. Oh, messed that up. I believe this is a yes without knowing. But did all SOG soldiers and missions have direct access to air support? And I don't want to answer for Lou, but absolutely. Uh, I don't. I can't think of a time that y'all went into the field and didn't have some sort of support. Even early on in '65 when they crossed the border the first time.
Yeah,
Uh, they were good about that, guys. That when this thing started off, they knew from prior incidences that they needed direct air support, i.e., slicks, king bees, but also uh, firepower directly attached to them at all given times. So
yeah.
I'm gonna release a book, little thing for y'all to read about early SOG that'll help out with some of this. Um, Casey has another good one. Where you were snatched POWs eager to divulge info to you guys, or were they hard asses and tight lipped when y'all get them?
I actually never. I was on a couple prisoner statues, but we never got a chance to get a prisoner. And it was supposed to be when you were on a target, you had a you had like you had a mission, whether it was a watch a road or mine a place or whatever it was. Your first thing was if there was a POW, your first thing was to grab the POW back from the North Vietnamese, and then you went from there. If you could get a prisoner, you would snatch them. They were hard to cry. They were there. I'm not lying. They were hard to get. There was only a few guys that actually got prisoners.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And I mean, they try and kill the guy before they let you get him out. So I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh yeah.
it all hell broke loose if y'all even got to grab one of them.
Yeah.
So,
When you,
Jace. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Mr. Lou.
yeah, I was just saying that I personally on the teams that I was on, we never we never had a chance to grab anybody. We would have if we had a chance, but you had to really watch because just like you said, but they would try to kill the prisoner and with you along with them too, of course.
Yeah.
So you had to watch what you were doing, you know. And yeah,
Besides bright lights, in my opinion, trying to grab a prisoner is the deadliest thing that y'all could do, just besides going on a mission.
yeah, really, because I mean, yeah, if if you if you grabbed a prisoner, pretty good chance that his buddy was watching that happen. And the North Vietnamese, they could get people. You were right in the areas that they built up, so there could be hundreds of guys on you in 5 minutes. They could have a lot of people looking for you, and yeah,
Boy, and that's when you start hearing the dogs and the
yeah,
trees beating
yeah,
and the bamboo, I mean, and whoo,
yeah,
pucker factor induced right then. That's where the guys, Casey, that's where the pucker factor term comes from right there.
yeah, yeah.
um Jason. Sorry if I'm wrong here, but were you with Pat when he walked through the ambush? I think that's he's meaning the ambush set up for the Marines. And did Pat ever tell you stories of his past missions while y'all were together?
Yeah, I wasn't with him when he walked through that ambush, but what happened? It was North Vietnamese soldiers were there, and they were trying to ambush the Marines. And when Pat walked through there, he only had 8 guys with him, so they just let him walk by. But they one of those guys that was on that ambush he was a captor and he was a prisoner, and they had him to talk at the headquarters, and they called Pat down there, and the guy started telling the Vietnamese interpreter that he knew Pat. Pat had walked right through their ambush, and they let him go. And Pat said he was really, it really made him shiver to know that the guy knew who the heck he was. So
And not only literally as soon as he walked in, the guy was smiling, and Pat
yeah,
said
yeah,
his blood
yeah,
ran
yeah,
cold because he
yeah,
said,
yeah,
"I'm about to hear something that's gonna rattle me." And
yeah,
he was pissed that that the Marines were his target and they were gonna annihilate him,
yeah.
and that also that there he is, and he had the drop on him, and Pat had no earthly idea
No,
that he I mean, had he wanted to, he would have wiped Pat off the face of the earth.
yeah. They didn't they didn't fire on Pat and the team because they wanted to get the Marines. And
Big numbers and create a lot of havoc.
yeah, yeah. So
Mm, mm, mm.
he was lucky then, and I was always lucky with to be with him and other people too. So I mean, there's a lot of people that aren't here now, and I am, but and, I always like to tell the story of when we were down in Washington at Gary Rhodes's Medal of Honor ceremony. We were going to a dinner or something, so Pat and I shared a room, and I was sitting on a chair and I was bent over tying my shoes, and Pat says, "Deseta, I just cannot figure out all the places you were, and you don't have a Purple Heart." And I have to. I looked up and I said, "Well, Pat, due to my superior infantry skills, and I just, but I didn't even get the whole sentence out where I bust out laughing. It was all pure luck, Pat." I said, "There was no planning." I said, "Sometimes it was just absolute luck that I didn't get shot up, or I said a mortar around had landed and it killed guys, 2 guys back of you. It wouldn't even knock the dust off of the brush around me, And I said that's the way it was. I was lucky."
It is, and it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, you're literally rolling the dice, getting off the plane. Walking through the bush. I mean, it's constantly a game. Your life's and it's. I get goosebumps reading about stuff like that all the time, and hearing y'all tell stories about stuff like that. It just, I honestly don't see how y'all kept it together and kept the strength to keep doing it like y'all did. It just outstanding, man.
It
Daniel. Oh, go ahead, sir.
it's the people you're with. You're not gonna let your buddy down. You just there'd be no way that I could not put my 100% effort around Pat, and he was the same way, and George was the same way. It just went down the line. The Americans would not let their other man down. Just wouldn't do it. It was there was there were very few. I, I'm trying to say this for you. There were very few times when Americans didn't put their best effort in, and
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
sometimes guys were scared, and being scared would take over, and it would push the paratrooper out of the way. So uh, it it never happened to me. I mean, guys are they would they would die for you. They would die before they give up, and that was
Those bonds y'all had were just too strong at that point in time for any of y'all to think about leaving one another.
yeah, yeah. That's the truth.
God, it's amazing that there y'all are, kids, and I laugh thinking, don't get me wrong, Delta Force and SEAL Team 6 do some wild stuff, flying into Pakistan and doing all that. But can you imagine giving 3 20-year-olds today, green berets, access to, go 50 kilometers behind enemy lines in Iran or Iraq or Syria, and with 4 indige, and tell them to go create havoc. Nah, I can't see that happening today. Y'all were unbelievable doing stuff like that. I
You
just
just you just wouldn't let your fellow soldier down. You know that was that was more than an act of cowardice. You just wouldn't do it. It would never enter your mind, no matter how no matter what the outcome was going to be that day. You just wouldn't do it. It was your
you'd rather die than let your
yeah
brothers down.
yeah you would have more fear of letting your brother down than dying. You would
Wow.
it was whether it was the paratrooper way or just the American soldier way. That's what it was. You know, Dan. As I said, Pat, when I told him it was my superior infantry skills, he just did a double take and looked at me. I couldn't hold. I was laughing 2 seconds after I said it, and I just luck, Pat. It was just luck, pure and simple. But anyhow, yeah, he was
Yeah,
he was an
Mr.
infantry.
Pat. I hope one day we might get to have him on or cross paths with him, because God, he's a hell of a man.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Daniel would like to know, how long did let me make sure, this is FOB3. How long did a patrol last, and did you RO in out in the field, or would y'all return to base at night on a
No,
on a patrol?
we we would run at nights, and you never once you got out once they dropped you off with them helicopters, you just stayed out there. And I'm gonna just this is only my what I know about this. Uh, you were the operations were supposed to be 5 days long, but if they found you within the second day, they would just run you to death, and you would you would literally be running to an LZ to be taken out of there, and so 3 days was the maximum. I think I was on one patrol that was 5 days long, but it was a dry hole, and there were no North Vietnamese around us, so we did stay to 5 days that time. But most of the time, you got you know within the third day they knew you were where you were at, and they were chasing you, and we didn't find this out till you know years later, but they had a mold in Saigon at the headquarters. It was he was just telling the North Vietnamese, they're going to be in Charlie 50 or going to be here, and they knew their intelligence was really good, so they knew you were there. They knew when you were coming and where you were at, and it was just the luck of the draw that you got away, because if you're in an area and they put 200 people trying to find you, they're going to find you. Yeah, and you know if you would just be lucky to get away.
Oh yeah.
It's that simple. You know, and you had to the Air Force helping you, and of course those great uh, helicopter pilots. I can never say enough. They were some of the bravest people you'd ever meet in your life to come down here and the front of the helicopter's got it's plastic, it's plexiglass. You know, it could get shattered by bullets, but they would still. And I always could never understand them guys. Well, when you're flying a helicopter, I don't know that, but it takes both hands and both feet to fly that thing, and you got to you got a co-pilot, but the pilot's actually, he's maneuvering it in a helicopter and at working the foot pedals and stuff. But them guys would come down there and pick us up, and I mean, bullets would be going just from all over the place, and them guys would look, they would look like they were just calm, cool, like they were sitting in an easy chair somewhere. But here, they had to have it. They had to be men of steel because they never, they would fly them things down and pick you up, and it would be like, just having a cup of tea or something for them. It was no big deal. They just did it. Where if I was flying that helicopter, I'd have hit every tree that there was in all Vietnam, and there was a many of them. But them guys made it look easy, and they were just brave, brave men. Uh, they always had the other man, his welfare in their mind. Those pilots. I mean, I just could never say enough about them. You know, they just were great guys, and I actually learned more of riding the motorcycles with them and met more of them that way than that. Actually, when you were in a helicopter and they were dropping you on an LZ, they didn't stand there and chat with you. They just you got out of the helicopter and they took off, and it was actually the same way when they brought you back. They FOB2, they the helicopters would stay there some night, overnight, but they'd be gone the next day, and Da Nang, they would just come in and pick you up at Da Nang and drop you off, and I was only in FOB one time with Pat, and I don't remember even the circumstances, but I remember Pat and I going to the club and having a cold beer. That's about all I remember. I remember some of the guys were the pilots just as I said, they were just brave, brave men, and they had to be men of steel because there ain't there there. It's one thing somebody firing an AK-47 at you. It's quite a different thing somebody firing. They had 51 calibers, which was like our 50 caliber, and we just a slightly little bit bigger. When you're firing a 50 caliber at you, when you're looking down the barrel of one of them, it's hard to be calm. But those pilots, they could do it. They would how they could even fly into all that stuff and remain calm. They just did, and they'd always, no matter what, they'd always try to come and get you, even even if the things were pretty bad.
Can you describe Captain On coming in to get you and Pat
Yep,
and Lion a little
yep.
bit?
Captain On was a Vietnamese helicopter pilot, and he was the he was the definition of cool because he just he just he never got rattled. He never sweated. Where I would be sweating bullets. Yeah, when he came in to get us in Oscar 8, uh, he actually flew that helicopter down and put the front wheels in the bomb crater and just kept it there steady. The H-34s, the King Bees, they only had one door, and it was on the right side. So, he had to put the door where all of us were, and that's what he did. And he kept it until we got everybody on board. He kept that helicopter just right there. I mean, bullets were going all over the place. And, you know, you you're not going to stay with somebody trying to kill you. You're going to, if that helicopter's your last hope of getting out of there, you're going to get on it. You know, you want to get on it. And you want it to fly away. The captain on, it was like just like he was having a cup of coffee in the Dunkin' Donuts or something. He just did it, and he was a calm and cool guy, and even years later, never got excited or anything. Uh, they just you know can't say enough about him. And there
And
were other, there
he
were
came
other.
alone with only a door gunner. Isn't that correct? Just him
Yeah,
and a door gunner.
yeah. He didn't have a co-pilot because he knew everybody had to get on that helicopter, and he had been in Oscar 8 before. So when he flew in, it was just him and his door gunner, and they got us all out. They got us all out, and I'm here today because of him. Pat had a lot to do with that, me being here too, but Captain On really had a lot to do with it too. And
I
he's
was
just
about
a
to say.
he's a humble guy now.
And
Still,
guys, I just showed he's on episode um 259 with Jocko and Tilt.
yeah,
I was filmed at SOAR 2 years ago or 3 years ago. When the call comes, you go with South Vietnamese pilot Captain Nguyen Qua On. I don't know if I said Qua White, but Vietnamese is not my specialty. But before some folks were wondering before we close because we've hit our question mark and we've almost been 2 hours now. Um, would you care to maybe we could show a few pictures and then maybe close with because folks are always interested, especially with as close as you were, if you could speak a little bit more about Mr. John Kettenberg.
yeah, yep. I'd be
Okay.
glad to.
Excellent. I'm going to put up a photo of him and I'll let you speak a little bit about him and we'll show some other ones.
Yeah, this is that was John right there where that arrow is, and that was the team sergeant. They were Chinese young. He was the team sergeant, and his name escapes me. But this this guy here, right in the front, sitting down, he was his name was Lloyd. There were Son and
Lloyd.
Lloyd they were Lloyd might be the guy back here. They were the point man and the tail gunner, and they would not let you get hurt. If you were American, they would guard you like you wouldn't believe. And they were great. They were great soldiers. And that picture there was John was with George Hunt. George Hunt was an experienced 1-0, and he went with John on that operation. And yeah, that's me at Nevada, and yeah, that's Pat and I at the Khe Sanh. But George Hunt knew that that some people thought that it was gone at a later date, but it was right before he got killed. George Hunt was with him. George Hunt was, as I said, he was the experienced 1-0, so he went with him, and as it turned out, yeah, that's George Air.
Mm-hmm. Tough man. Tough man.
Yeah, and, George was he was just a really cool guy. Unfortunately, I met him at FOB2, but we were there were just not many people. We didn't there was you didn't socialize as much as you might have later. And there was the one guy that made a comment about pictures. You weren't supposed to take no pictures. You weren't supposed to have your own personal camera. You were supposed, they had them Olympus pen cameras, but you weren't supposed to, you weren't supposed to talk. You weren't supposed to take any pictures of the American soldier, special forces soldiers. They're a cut above, but your regular. When you get a guy like me, I'm going to break the rules. That's part of that's part of getting over on the system. You know, when they told me don't take any pictures, and they give me an Olympus pen camera. Well, what the hell was I going to do? I was going to take some pictures. And I had my great sister would send me a 35 millimeter color film over there, so I would take the pictures with that. Pat said, "I don't know how you got that film," and I said, my sister sent it to me, and so a lot of my pictures were in color, but I didn't believe in the not taking the pictures. Yeah, what I believe was, what else is the army going to do to me to try to kill me? They're doing everything they possibly can to get me killed. So I'm gonna do some of the things that I want to do. And
That is great.
yeah,
Y'all've got some good ones. There was another. Gosh, I know I had that picture of you and John. This is my favorite of you and John, especially because it's his new camera. I showed it last time, but this also has your famous tiger stripe boonie in it. But
yeah,
this is a wonderful one, my favorite photo of you two together.
yeah. That was that was at FOB2, and that was right by the motor pool. And but John had got that 35 millimeter camera with the it had all these features, and one of them was you could focus it in and set the timer, and you could run around and get in the picture. That's what he did. You know, we were standing there, but he focused it, and he comes around and gets in the picture, and uh, that's one of my favorite too. There really isn't a lot of pictures of John, but I always liked that one, and he was just
There's with you with him, that's my favorite, and him alone, that is a classic. That is a great photo of
yeah,
John and his roadster back there.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
a fresh faced young New York Green Beret heading off to kick some tail in Southeast Asia.
yeah.
And he was a good looking man, boy. He had movie star looks.
Yeah, he was a big guy. He was a tall, big guy, and he was a handsome person. Of course,
Gosh,
when you're standing when you're standing alongside of me, anybody's gonna look handsome.
you're too hard on yourself. You're too hard on yourself, sir. I wanted to show this one because this is a great one because this was when well, there's two. One is Pat being recognized for the Khe Sanh mission, but then you were with Pat for another special occasion. This is at FOB3 when he's receiving a Bronze Star from Lieutenant Colonel Barr.
Yeah,
Um, there's young Pat right there.
yeah.
Um, and I don't know if either that's Sergeant Major Harris or if, yep, that's
I think
Sergeant Major
that's
Harris right
probably
there.
hard. Yeah,
That almost looks like Lynn Black, but it didn't. That's clearly not. But I'd like to know who that is. I'll have to look into that. But I had this last one right here, and maybe you can speak a little bit about this because this took, I think, 40 years for Mr. Pat to get this, and you were there that day, and what a great. There's video I'll post of this, but what a day for
Yeah,
both of y'all.
it was 40 over 40 years before he got his Distinguished Service Cross, and all the way we had a motel. But this was the third group. It was in their chapel where they had that ceremony, and all of George Sternberg drove me over there, and all the way over, I said, George, I'm going to salute him. When they give him the award, and I get a chance to render a salute to him where everybody can see it, I will. But when he started talking, he uh, he started talking about me. He's the guy that got the award, but he's telling this whole crowd of people about me, and I was so shocked that he did that I forgot all about saluting him. And when we were driving back to the hotel, I said, "God damn, George, I forgot to salute him. I've been saying all day, remember to salute him, remember, and I forgot." But it was just such a great moment because he was talking, and then he brought me up into his conversation. It surprised me, but it shouldn't have, but it did, and that's why I never saluted him. But
That's the kind of guy Pat is. He's
yeah,
there. He is getting the second highest honor in the nation,
yeah,
and he's talking about his teammates, specifically you, other than what he did. Uh, what a man! What a man! While we're speaking of the legends, Jason, which is a good one, and we'll be getting ready to close after this. Jason wanted to know, would you mind telling, since the story of how you received your SOG knife was so incredible, would you mind telling it again in case anyone didn't hear it or wasn't live for the first one?
it's it's a John and I were at FOB2. It was at RT Nevada, and I was always crazy about knives, but John had an M1 carbine bayonet, and it was just a good sized knife. It had a good blade on it. The handle was good, and I admired it a lot. And I said that I wonder if I go over to supply and ask them for an M1 carbine bayonet, would they give it to me? And that's what we did. When we went over to supply, and when we went in, uh, Bob Howard, he was the supply sergeant at FOB2. A lot of people don't know that, but he knew how to do the paperwork for the supply sergeant. So he was a supply sergeant, and when you went in there, he had his rucksack right on the end of the counter with his rifle, and he was ready to go on any mission to save somebody or to whatever they needed. He would do it, and so we were always thankful that he was around because we know if we got in trouble, he would be coming out there in one of them helicopters to get us. And it was quite comforting. But when we went in, Fred Zabatowski was in there. They were buddies and they were talking. And I don't know. I still to this day think Fred had something to do with this, but I can't be sure because I just can't be. But anyhow, I go in there with John, and Bob Howard he was a very approachable. He was an E7, but he was just a cool guy. He was just he wasn't just because he was an E7 and you were an E5, that didn't mean anything to him. And but we go in, and Fred and him are talking. So I say I knew Fred very well. I said hi to Fred, and when I was in front of Howard, I said, Sarge, I was wondering if I want to get an M1 carbine bayonet. They had another knife that looked, it was called an M3, and it was a Second World War trench knife, but it looked really it was just an M1 carbine bayonet without the without the loop for the barrel going. But anyhow, I said to him, really would like to, I think it'd be a good utility knife, and I said, I really like to have one. And yeah, he said, well, let me go back here and see. Yeah, he said, let me go back and see if I got one. And he comes back a little while later, and he had a brown box, and he said, I don't have no carbine bayonets. I don't have any M3s. He said, but I got this knife. And he opened the end of the box, and when he slid that SOG knife out of there, I had never seen anything that looked as nice as that. I knew a lot about knives, but I never seen anything like that. And it was I'm colorblind, but it was like a plum color or purple, light purple, whatever. And he said, will this do? And I said, yeah. I put it back in the box, and I put the box under my arm. And I said, John, let's get out of here before you get mine. And when we walked out with it, and it was the serial number was 2704 was the serial number of that. And I treasured that knife for years and years and years. And uh, as I tell a lot of people, John Kettenberg never got the recognition that he deserved. I mean, it's kind of hard to outshine Bob Howard. It really is. You'd have to go a long way, but still, John got the Medal of Honor too, and so I always think because we were on the same team, we were friends. I always think never gets enough recognition. So anyhow, that knife is. There's a guy named Neil Thorne. He was a National Guard guy, but he helped he helped Pat. He wrote the citation up for Pat to get his DFC, and my Bronze Stars, and a lot of other guys. He actually wrote all the awards up, and did all the work for us to get those awards. So I become friends with him and his wife, and I I sent. I was talking to him one time, and I said, I had this knife, and it was supposed to go down there to Charleston to be in the Medal of Honor Museum, and under John's name. And I said, they're not going to have the Medal of Honor machine down there in Charleston. It's going to be in Texas somewhere. I said, I don't really know where it's going to be, but anyhow, he's got my knife, and he's got actually John's beret, and he's whenever they decide where the Medal of Honor Museum is going to be, it's going to be put in put in that on display under John's name. So
Wow.
that's that knife is probably worth $2,000 anyhow. And
Oh, well, it's what if it's an authentic SOG knife, you could literally name your price right
yeah,
now. I mean, that's one of my, like Jason said, that's one of my favorite stories, especially with all your other ones. That is just and especially you crossing Bob Howard with Fred, and
yeah. I
God,
mean, it, years later, actually, it was when Tilt was starting to write his book on the ground, and he by Pat, by being associated with Pat, I got in that book too. Pat always would say, "I'm going to make you famous," Deseta, and I said, "Yeah. First you're going to get me killed, then you're going to make me say famous." You don't have to make me famous, Pat. That's okay. You're doing a good enough job of trying to get me killed. But anyhow, the the, the, the knife is it's important to me because of John. And uh, when I get off of here, I'm going to send you some pictures of 2704. And uh, Greg Covington, who was a knife maker, he's going to he just messaged me a few months ago, and he wanted to know if I had a picture of that knife. So I called Neil, and Neil sent me some pictures, and he got invited to go to shore and set up a table for his knives and stuff. So he's making he's making a replica of 2704, and it's going to be called J30, but it's going to be out at that. He's going to have it out there when he sets up his.
I
Late.
did not know you were getting your own one, but I know Mr. Greg's work, and I've seen some of them on sale at Soar. So I'm very anxious to see what yours will look like. He is a hell of a
Oh
bladesmith.
yeah,
I
he
mean,
is.
he makes some beautiful,
Oh
beautiful
yeah,
knives.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
He's a good. And like you, I become friends with him, and I'm happy to know it. But
he is a very good man, a very and in the way he treats you Vietnam veterans, that's what made me respect him all the more. Not only with his own work, but the way he treats y'all is you don't get better than that. But was there anything you'd like to since we're almost at 2:15 now? Would you would you is there anything else you'd like to close with before we end for the day?
I like to say, I was very lucky, but there were over 250 million guys that served during the Vietnam era, and although there wasn't that many in Vietnam, they all were still doing their job, and none of us would have got out of Vietnam without them guys doing their job. So I always try to remember to give them a little recognition too, and I really believe that because there's Air Force guys and there's Marine guys and Army guys and Navy guys and uh, and not people don't give them enough recognition because
The medics for y'all, the armorers for y'all, the intel guys for y'all,
yeah,
and not to mention just the everyday, maintenance guys on base. Without them, you saw operators, fence crossers. Y'all couldn't have done what y'all did without a doubt. So,
yeah,
and very very humble of you to to have that as your parting word. And I agree wholeheartedly with that as well, sir.
I I haven't been out to shore since the COVID, but I started driving out there about 15 years ago, and I take my motorcycle and I stop here and there and but I haven't I got a certain way that I go and I go out Interstate 40 and right a little bit south of the entrance of the Grand Canyon is a town called Williams, and Williams it was where the mountain men used to meet when they rendezvoused. So it's not a big place, but there's a lot of there's a lot of bars and a lot of restaurants. And they're like cooking, they're like barbecuing right on the sidewalk and stuff. It's a really friendly place, and so when I always try to make sure that I stop there for one night because I just like it. And there's there's one time I pulled in there, and it was getting towards the afternoon, so I seen a sign American owned, and it was just a little motel. But I pulled in, and the lady in there, she said, I said I'd like to have a room for the night, and she said, well, fill this card out, and he likes the number and stuff, and she looks out the window and she sees my van, and on the front of the van I have a 173rd license plate. So she says, "Oh, I see you're a military person. I can give you a discount." I said, "Oh, that discounts are good." And she's talking, and she said to me, "My husband was in Vietnam, and he was just he was an airplane mechanic, and but she emphasized just an airplane mechanic." So when I got my key and I was started when one foot went over the threshold, I turned around and I said, "You know, your husband being just a airplane mechanic, an engine mechanic." I said, "There's no telling how many lives he saved by just doing his job." And I said, "You tell him I said thanks." And the next day when I went to check out, this big guy was in there, and he was the airplane mechanic, and he first after I checked out, he said, "Well, I like to talk to you," and I try not to cuss because guys do cuss and you can get carried away and say some things you really shouldn't. But I was thinking, what's this guy want to talk to me about? And I was thinking in my mind, you must have cussed or something to his wife. And so he follows me outside, and I open the van door, and he comes over, and he says, I gotta ask you something. And I said, you know, I said, if I cussed, I didn't mean it. I said, I'm just happy to be here in Williams, and I didn't mean to cuss or anything. And he said, no. He said, I got to know what you told my wife. And I said, I didn't cuss. I said, if I did, I apologize. And he said, no. He said, you told her something because ever since you've been here, she has treated me with the utmost respect and really better than she ever has in 30 some years. And I just started laughing, and I told him a story about. I said, we all think that we're the baddest guy around. I said, but the guys that you kept the airplanes flying. You kept ammunition coming to it, food, getting the wounded out. I just said to her, he's not just an airplane mechanic. I said he's a lifesaver person, and none of us know how many lives he saved by just doing his job. And with that, I got my van and took off. But the guy was really happy, but I really meant it too. There's no, there's no telling how many people's lives got saved because guys are just doing their job.
Absolutely. And guys, I try and do that with when they people that know I talk to SOG veterans and Force Recon veterans and all of that were mechanics or maintenance men or typists or what have you. I always try and do the same thing as well. That at least you were there serving your country and helping out as best you
Oh,
could.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
But wow, we've gone longer than I expected. I'm so glad we got to have Mr. Lou back on to cover, and hopefully we can have you back on in the future whenever we start covering some more stuff. But that's going to be it for today. Guys, y'all had a great questions. We greatly appreciate all of the interaction. It's been wonderful. Everyone's saying thank you. I think we're going to close it up for today, Mr. Lou. If there's anything else you'd like to say,
No, that's it. I appreciate you having me on, bud. Thank you
it's
so much.
been it's been an absolute honor and a pleasure, and we'll be wanting to have you back on for sure here in the next month or so. Absolutely, but I'm gonna close it out for today, and I'll let you guys that have been here get ready for y'all's football coming on, and hope all y'all's teams do well, and we'll be in touch and have some stuff next week. So y'all be good, and I'll see y'all later.
Okay, bud. Keep in touch, bud.
Yes, sir. See you later.
Okay,
Bye bye.
bye.